My name is Natasha. This started happening about 3 months ago, right after I broke up with my ex, Tibbet. I'm 23, and I just moved into my first solo apartment after living with roommates since college. It was nothing special, a one-bedroom in a mid-sized complex in Columbus, Ohio. I work remote, so I'm home a lot. That's part of why I wanted my own place. I was tired of trying to take calls while my roommates were being loud in the kitchen or whatever. The apartment was on the second floor, facing the back of the complex, which meant my view was basically the parking lot and then some trees. Not exactly scenic, but I didn't care. I had my own space, my own schedule, and for the first time in my adult life, actual privacy. For the first few weeks, everything was fine. I didn't really interact with anyone in the building besides the occasional head nod. There was an older woman on the first floor who always seemed to be checking her mail whenever I walked by, and a couple across the hall who I'd hear arguing sometimes through the walls. That was about the extent of my social landscape. Anyway, I started noticing this guy. The first time was maybe 3 weeks after I moved in. I was coming back from the gym around 8 p.m., and as I was walking up the stairs to my floor, I passed someone coming down. He was this nondescript white guy, maybe late 30s or early 40s. He had an average build. He was also wearing a gray hoodie. There wasn't really anything remarkable about him. We did that awkward thing where you both try to move to the same side, then he just kind of squeezed past me without saying anything. I didn't think much of it. The second time was a few days later. I was in the parking lot getting something out of my car, and I saw him standing near the dumpsters. He wasn't really doing anything, just sort of standing there. When I looked over, he turned and walked away around the side of the building. Again, not that weird on its own. I shrugged it off and went about my business as usual. The third time is when things started feeling off. I was working at my desk, which faces the window overlooking the parking lot. It was the middle of the afternoon, and I happened to glance outside while I was on a call. There was a navy blue car parked in the lot that I didn't recognize, and someone was sitting in the driver's seat. I couldn't see their face clearly, but I could tell they were looking up at the building, at my floor, maybe at my window specifically, but I couldn't be sure. I watched for a few seconds, then went back to my call. When I looked again, maybe 10 minutes later, the car was gone. For whatever reason, that stuck with me. I started paying more attention after that, and the more attention I paid, the more I noticed him. The guy spent a lot of time in the parking lot, not every day, but often enough that it started to feel like a pattern. Sometimes he'd be walking through, sometimes sitting in that same blue car, which I realized was his a few days later. Once I saw him standing by the stairs to my building, just looking at his phone. He never looked directly at me, or if he did, I never caught him. But I started to get this feeling like he was always positioned in a way where he could see my apartment. I told myself I was being paranoid. The complex isn't that big. If someone lived there and kept similar hours to me, I'd probably see them a lot. That's just math. And I'd never actually caught him doing anything wrong either. He wasn't following me, and he wasn't approaching me. He was just around. But then something happened that I couldn't explain away. I have a pretty set routine. I go to the same gym at the same time most days, and I usually stop at this Chipotle on the way back twice a week. It's like a 15-minute drive from my apartment in a completely different part of town. One night, I'm sitting in the Chipotle eating by myself and scrolling through my phone. I look up, and there he is. That same guy with that same gray hoodie from the first time I saw him. He was just sitting at a table across the restaurant, eating a burrito bowl. I started to feel sick in my stomach, I'm not exaggerating. I felt physically sick for a second, because there was no reason he should be there. The gym I go to is in a different direction. This Chipotle isn't even near anything else. It's not like it's on a main road where you just happen to end up. You go there on purpose. I tried to rationalize it. I mean, Chipotle is pretty popular, and he was eating, but he was also looking at me. Not obviously. He looked down at his food, then glanced up, then looked down again. But I could feel it. And when I got up to leave, I swear he started gathering his stuff too. I walked to my car fast. I didn't run, but I was moving. I got in, locked the doors, and just sat there for a second. When I looked back at the restaurant, I couldn't see him through the windows. I don't know if he came outside or not, but I didn't want to stick around. The drive home, I kept checking the mirrors. I didn't see anyone following me, but I took a weird route just to be safe. It was probably overkill, especially because he already knew where my apartment was, but I wasn't thinking straight. When I got back to my apartment, I sat in the dark for like an hour just watching the parking lot through my window. I never saw either him or that sedan. So eventually, I convinced myself I'd overreacted and went to bed. The next morning, though, I woke up and looked outside like I'd been doing every morning since this started. The sedan was there, and I could see someone sitting in it, so I didn't think twice and just called the police. I felt stupid doing it. What was I gonna say? Something along the lines of, there's a guy who I keep seeing and it's making me uncomfortable. As silly as it sounded, I called anyway, and I tried to explain the situation. The officer I talked to was polite, but clearly thought I was being paranoid. He said they could send someone to check the parking lot, but unless the person was doing something illegal, there wasn't much they could do. He suggested I document things, write down dates and times, take pictures if I could, and call back if anything escalated. By the time a patrol car actually showed up, maybe 45 minutes later, the sedan was gone. The officer walked around the complex, knocked on a few doors, and basically told me what I expected. No sign of anyone suspicious, no complaints from other residents. He gave me a card and told me to call if anything else happened. Nothing happened for about a week after that. I started to relax a little. I figured maybe the police visits had spooked that creep, or maybe I really had been imagining things and my brain just needed to reset. But then I got the note. It was slipped under my door sometime during the night, and I found it in the morning when I woke up. It was a handwritten note that read, "You should really close your blinds at night." I was terrified. I remember dropping the note out of fear before scrambling to pick it back up. My hands were shaking, and I felt a really nasty feeling of danger and helplessness. I ended up moving out 2 weeks later. I didn't even wait for my lease to end. I just paid the penalty and left. I thought that was the end of it. I moved back in with my parents, planning to stay there until I found another apartment. But if that was really the end of it, I probably wouldn't be writing this. About a month after moving back home, I was driving back from the gym. A different gym, obviously, one near my parents' place, and that's when I saw it. A navy blue sedan parked on a random side street maybe 2 blocks from my parents' neighborhood. I immediately recognized the car, and I knew it was the same car. I knew it for a fact. I sped the rest of the way home, trying not to freak out. I didn't see anyone following me, but that almost made it worse, because if it was him, and I'm almost positive it was, then he probably already knew where I was going. I told my parents as soon as I got inside. My dad said he'd keep an eye out, and my mom started double-checking all the locks. They've been watching the street more carefully since then. My dad even mentioned getting a camera for the front porch. It's been about 2 weeks, and I haven't seen that car since. Part of me wants to believe it was a coincidence, and it was just a similar car and I'm losing my mind, but I know what I saw. I don't even know how he found me, but I really don't want to think about the possibility that I have a dedicated stalker who's been tracking everything I do. I'm quite honestly scared to do anything that involves leaving the house. I'm debating getting the police involved again, but there's not much I'd be able to even tell them. Hopefully the story needs no updates.